The government is trying to cover something up. The mysterious object that appeared in the skies above California was not an airplane. And I'm going to explain to you how I came to that conclusion. Hey guys, it's November 21st, 2010. I'm Reginald. I'm also known as DimCAD. I've come to the conclusion that the mysterious object in the sky that appeared near California was not an airplane. It simply makes no sense. It took the government 12 hours to conclude that it was an airplane. That is completely ridiculous. No military should take 12 hours to reach that conclusion. An idea that their story was "we don't know" for 12 hours is suspicious in of itself. Actually, it was more like 36 hours, because it took about 36 hours for the Department of Defense to actually come out and say that it was most likely an airplane. But it was interesting because in the beginning, there was a whole bunch of experts who came out and said that this is probably a missile. This is either probably a missile or definitely a missile. But then we started to see the media sort of change its coverage after the DoD decided what its cover story is going to be. Then we had experts of various backgrounds. A lot of people who were actually in the Navy, a former Navy officer who worked for the NSA, Wayne Madsen, who is a straight shooter. He is convinced that this was a ballistic missile of some type. He's convinced that it was a Chinese ballistic missile. And although I'm not an expert, I do listen to experts. For example, a former 3-star general and a pilot, Tom McInery, went on Fox News. This is early in the whole process, before it was a whole media show. Spin. I'll get to that in a bit. He came on television and he was absolutely convinced. I'll put a link right there in my description box and you guys can watch his video. Of course, there was a Russian expert that came on Russia Today. He's a military expert. He was convinced that it was some type of ICBM that came from a submarine. I mean, it's one of these cases where the government says, are you going to believe what you see or believe what we tell you? And apparently people are just going to believe whatever the government tells them. And I find it to be absolutely ridiculous. Daily Dave, a guy who actually has experience with missiles because he was actually in the Navy. And there's a video I'm also going to link in the description box. He doesn't come out and say that it was definitely a missile, but he says it definitely looks like a missile, and I thought that was quite fascinating. So if you look close enough, you can find information. People came out on the internet, and people, not just any old people, actual generals, former 3-star generals, people who know what the hell they're talking about, saying that this is not an airplane. So this is the conclusion I've come to. The government took 12 hours to come up with their story for, oh gee, what is this missile in the sky? What is this object in the sky? And their conclusion was that it was an airplane. And we started to see all these Photoshop images pop up. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I am convinced, based on what these experts said, that this was not a plane. At this point, we don't know exactly what it was because the government isn't being very transparent. But Wayne Madsen seems to be convinced that this is a Chinese missile, and perhaps the Chinese fired this missile. I'm saying maybe they fired this missile to sort of throw their weight around. And he said that this wouldn't be the first time that the U.S. anti-submarine warfare defense sensors failed. So what does that say about this country? We're spending all this money and we can't even keep up with basic defense. It's quite fascinating. Well, it's nothing really basic about this, but you would think that if we're spending all this money on our military, we should at least be able to prevent subs from coming into our own waters. What is the significance of this? And what do you think? Do you think it's an airplane? Do you think it's a UFO? Or do you think it's a missile? I'm going to believe what my eyes say. I'm going to believe what these experts say, because they seem to have more credibility than a government that has lied repeatedly. Keep in mind, the United States government lied about weapons of mass destruction. It has lied over and over about September 11th and other things. So if the government is willing to lie about those things, then why would you automatically take its word, even in a situation like this? So what do you guys think?